easy again, my aims and objectives. My SWOT analysis is based on how my session went. My strengths were that I had given a clear introduction where I introduced myself, Toby, and the aims and objectives for the session. This is a strength because it helps to give the children an idea of what they are learning for the end of the session. Whilst Toby was leading the group, I ensured to stay busy and ensured that the next drill was ready. Another strength was my ability to adapt when needed. For example, I made a drill harder for a pair of participants because they had completed the drill with ease. In addition to this, our timing was good, considering the children came out 20 minutes late to the session. To ensure I kept the morale of the group high, I made sure my voice and body language was enthusiastic. I praised them constantly to make sure they knew they were doing it correctly. The organisation of the session was good, however, my weakness was spatial awareness. For example, some of the drills overlapped, which made it confusing for the participants. Another weakness was my group control, explanation of drills and skills and demonstrations. The opportunities that have arisen are a UKCC Level 1 certificate in coaching rounders and is based in Plymouth. However, it costs £199 and is a 2-day course from the 7th of November to the 8th, 2017. Each day will start at 8:45 AM and finish at 5 PM. This course, however, is very expensive, and that's without the cost of travel. For example, it takes 3 hours and 49 minutes from Lancing by car and 7 hours and 14 minutes by train. The course is a 2-day course and lands on a weekend, which is a problem because I work Saturdays from 8 till 4 and have college throughout the week. My first strength was the fact that I moved between participants to ensure that they were happy with what they were doing. During the drills, I made sure to ask questions such as, do you need help? Is this easy or hard? Or even, would you like me to show you again? This is reassuring the participants that Toby and I were there to help and not to boss them around. By talking to them and joining in, we gained respect from the group, which meant that they were slightly better behaved and listened to us when we were talking. At the start of the session, Toby and I introduced ourselves, explaining what we were there to do, the aims and objectives for the session, and let them ask anything they wanted to ask us before moving on. We did this to allow them to get used to us and feel comfortable with us leading their session. My final main strength was the fact that I was constantly being productive, even when I was coaching. Even when I wasn't coaching, I went around and made sure the next drill was ready, so that there was a smooth and quick transaction between the two. If the drill was already sorted, which it was, I then went on to ensure that all participants were okay and helped any that were struggling with the current activity. After reviewing the session and completing it myself and Toby found that we had been too vocal with the children. This is because some children weren't really understanding what was being asked of them. This showed us that different children found it easier to receive and process information better when it was conveyed differently. For example, gestures and vocal instructions worked better for some, however others found it better when a demonstration was delivered. Therefore, next time I will make sure to have diagrams and demonstrations in place as well as vocal instructions, so that all the participants feel content on knowing what they are being asked to do. Demonstrations and diagrams are especially good because they give the participants a visual representation of what they are to do, which they are able to check themselves. In addition to this, we found that because some of our activities required our participants to be spread out, it meant that they made it harder to call them in. For example, for the next task, because we had to shout and some participants weren't quite able to hear us. Therefore, a whistle would have been a good idea because it would have made it easier to call the kids in so that we could quickly explain the instructions and get them going again as quickly as possible so that they are not sitting down for too long. Also, if there were printed and laminated diagrams, then the children could take them with them to allow them to check themselves whether or not they are doing the skill correctly. In addition to this, laminating the diagrams enables them to use it even when it is raining, and prevents tearing. To reduce these problems, next time I plan a taking session, I will ensure that I have laminated sheets with diagrams on them for visual representation, demonstrations, and ensure that each leader has a whistle. The second area of improvement for the session is group control. Group control is an area for improvement because during the session my partner and I found that when we were trying to explain the instructions of the drill to the participants, they weren't listening to us, which meant that they didn't really understand what was being asked of them. This caused problems for us as leaders because it meant that we had to spend a little longer than normal explaining the instruction to them, which eats up the time that we have. This means there was less time to play the games. However, with this said, next time we are explaining instructions, we could use the participants and engage them more so that they are more interested in what is being said. This also allows them to feel more important and useful rather than sitting there being talked at. In addition to this, we could also ask constant questions to keep them engaged. Gaining respect between the instructors and participants is important because when respect is achieved, the participants are more likely to listen to you. However, to receive their respect, you have to respect them. Lastly, when the group was performing the drills, they weren't completely well behaved. However, a behavioural plan could have been in place so that they were better behaved during the practical. With this said, if there was a little more respect between us leaders and participants, they would have been better behaved whilst we were helping others. When planning the session, my partner and I didn't take into consideration the space we had. This meant that when we were setting up the drills, they began to overlap. We tried to separate them by using different coloured cones. However, the overlapping of each drill confused the participants, making it harder to position themselves because they couldn't visualise the drill. However, I have considered making a drills diagram where I make a diagram to ensure I have used space wisely. This could be in a circuit form, a relay form, or even one where we give the same equipment to each group of children and they set it up after we explain it. With this said, it keeps them engaged and shows their understanding of the drill, because if they are unable to set it up, then they don't fully understand the drill and what they are supposed to do. Therefore, next time, my partner and I will make sure to have pre-planned where the drills are going to be set up, to ensure that we don't confuse the children. Getting them to clear the equipment away through a game is also good because it keeps things neat and tidy.